My name is Marie Trainer. I'm with the Milken Institute in the Lifetime Financial Security Program, and I'm very excited to kind of dive into our next panel, which is going to feature some amazing people who are really kind of pushing the edge on what AI is. And either if you were at dinner last night or today, you know that there's a lot of thoughts and feelings behind how AI is impacting all of our industries. So I'm pleased to introduce Sri Krishnamurthy, who is the CEO and founder of Quant University, working right outside of Boston. He's a CFA charter holder. He's been focusing on AI, and as I said last night, he's been doing AI before it was cool. So he's been in it for a while. He's worked with Citigroup, Endica, MathWorks, and his counterpart is going to be Randy Blaha, Vice President of Retirement Solutions and Technology at Nationwide Financial, and he'll be discussing their AI work. Randy's had various roles at Nationwide, including BSA leader and individual products. He's also been Nationwide's IT Executive Program Management Organization. He currently leads an organization of technology professionals that plan, build, and run applications that support Nationwide's retirement solution business. And this panel will be moderated by Bridget Bearden, who is the research and development strategist for eBri. She's helped to, I'm sure most of you in this room have talked with Bridget before, but she helps to establish new strategic partnerships, expand membership, and execute proprietary research. She has 2 decades of experience in developing research and thought leadership in retirement. So please, here they are.
Hi. Thank you, May Reed, for that wonderful introduction. So over the past year, AI has made incredible progress with major improvements in its ability to reason, handle different types of data, adapt in real time, and making it more powerful, easier to use, and a bigger part of our daily lives than ever before. I use ChatGPT almost on a daily basis for personal and professional uses, and I'm not afraid to admit it. And that sentence was written by ChatGPT. So today we are joined by 2 incredible leaders whom May Reed already introduced. So Sri and Randy, if you could just spend a minute explaining your roles to the audience and how it relates to retirement security and financial advice. Just for a brief minute, we already know most of your background, but just how it applies today.
Absolutely. So my name is Sri. I run a company called Quant University, and the last year I've just been using ChatGPT. I'm just kidding. My role, I have a dual role. So I run a company called Quant University, which primarily focuses on how do you enable AI in the enterprise when you have this really cool and powerful technology, but you got to adhere to the rules. You got to make it available to humans. You got to follow the various aspects of what does it mean to apply it to specific business use cases. So we work with companies to enable them with both the technology and the acumen to make sure that they're deploying these technologies with responsibility. On the other hand, I also have a faculty role at Northeastern University in Boston. We primarily focus on enabling our students, the next generation workforce. Over the last 10 years, I've had the pleasure of training more than 1,000 students, all graduate students, and they kind of show off all the cool things they've been doing in the industry. And in the last year, everybody has been using ChatGPT to enable their projects. And I can share some of the GitHub profiles of some of the students, and they are extremely proud with the way they are kind of using technology to enable new business use cases. Thank you.
My name is Randy Blaha. I lead the technology organization for our retirement plans business at Nationwide. That includes not just the record keeping, but all of the digital interactions, the service experience. So really the end-to-end responsibility for technology. Couldn't be prouder to be with this room and really excited on this topic. It's really interesting to see the AI conversation come up in just about every interaction today. So excited to talk about that.
Thanks. So Sri delivered our keynote address last year, our morning keynote. It was entitled Generative AI and Large Language Models, Opportunities, Risks, and Its Use in Finance. This was delivered in January. So if you could you walk us through what has happened in the last year and maybe just kind of give a core overall primer on AI at the same time?
So that'll require at least a few days, but we'll try to condense that in 10 minutes or so. I know it's an afternoon session, so I'm pretty sure everybody is all like alert, taking notes. So I'm going to start with a quiz. I don't know if we can switch to slides.
Can you put the slides up?
Okay, so this is something I do in my classes at Northeastern because I teach a Saturday afternoon class, and I want to make sure that everybody's paying attention to what's happening in the classroom. So I'm going to start with the quiz. This should be a very simple quiz. You don't need to do a lot of math. If you really have difficulties calculating this, you could use ChatGPT or a calculator, okay? So you're building an AI system which processes PDF files, and it takes 1 minute to process a PDF file. How many documents can you process in 60 minutes or an hour? 60, right? So I asked ChatGPT, and it gave me the answer 60 minutes. And this was last year, though. This year, I used what's called as the reasoning mode. And I asked it explicitly, research the capabilities of state-of-the-art systems and answer after thinking. That's the only additional thing I used. And I used what's called as the reasoning mode. And then it said that the straightforward math is what you all gave as an answer. But then it did all this analysis. It said, oh, you know what? We have parallel processing. We have GPUs. Anybody knows about NVIDIA? GPUs, right? So we can put all this in the cloud, and we can kind of run everything on the cloud. And every PDF file is not going to be the same size. Some may be more complex than others. And you have data transfer to be considered and things like that. So this is what an analyst would potentially do, not just give an answer, right? And now it comes back with an answer saying, well, the straightforward answer is 60, but in reality, you could process a lot more, right? So that's the kind of progression we have seen in the last year, wherein systems are able to at least mimic this notion of analysis and thinking, right? And now we are kind of looking at this whole evolution of possibilities, and I'm just going to focus on these 6 bullet points. I'll keep it brief so that Randy can kind of share some of the deeper insights of what happens at Nationwide, but I'm going to keep it very generic, if you will. So one thing we're seeing is everybody has access to these digital assistants, ChatGPT or Gemini or Cloud or whatever you're using. You have these tools which you're able to kind of use as an assistant, drafting a document, kind of summarizing something, right? But then we were also seeing that, well, why are we doing this whole set of steps? Why can't we automate them with AI, PDF processing, transcription of documents, translation, summarization, automatic chatbots? All those are coming into play as business use cases. And then we have AI kind of being embedded as implicit tools. We are not kind of explicitly calling AI, but we are seeing it happen behind the scenes. Simple things like we are writing an email, and your AI prompts you on what the next right word should be, right? It's uncovering intent and trying to give you suggestions on what you should be doing. Maybe you did not have those capabilities in search, but you're seeing AI kind of deliver those results to you because you're searching with a particular context in mind, right? So this AI behind the scenes is kind of becoming more and more of a norm, even though you're not explicitly calling AI to do specific things. On the other hand, you have all these possibilities now. I mean, the left side is what you see as a snapshot of all the things you see on ChatGPT if you try to use a model. More or less looks like what you'll go to a Starbucks and see all the drink things, right? So you'll be wondering, like, what does a particular drink have? So you have to make those kinds of choices. Am I reasoning? Am I writing? Am I summarizing? Am I generating a drawing or an image? So I have to be able to pick and choose what I intend to do. And then we have these advancements. In the past, you ask a question, you get back a response. You tweak the question, you get back another response, and you do it one step at a time. Now you can basically put together multiple steps and say, execute this whole workflow. And we have this notion of what I call as agents. How many of you know what agents are? Okay, some of you. So Randy is going to talk more about it. But then this is basically a digital worker who can potentially do various things in addition to thinking, in addition to accessing the right kinds of tools for the job, right? And just a fun fact, I could not get a job in 2002 because my graduate thesis was on agent-based systems, and no one knew what the heck it was in 2002. And so I had to join Citigroup and do trading systems because they were the only people who said, like, we can do something like an agent, but it's not going to be intelligent, but we'll push the trades through. Anyways, the point here is you are seeing this amazing analysis. And this is a snapshot. If you're on social media, there's this new viral agentic system called as Manus. And Manus basically can take a prompt, which looks like what you see in the left, and generate this whole dashboard. It generates the code. It looks for all the data online, puts together this entire dashboard, and that's becoming the norm. That's the kind of computation we're going to be having, right? Agents are going to be able to do so much more, which humans will probably take weeks and months to actually get things done. And then we heard a lot about personalization, right? And why is that possible? Because the last 10 years or so, we've been collecting so much data. And we were wondering, what do we do with all this data, right? So today, we have the ability to build out tools which can personalize those pieces of information and cater to people based on their specific needs. So you have automation, you have personalized landing pages, you have personalized advice, all of them leading to customer centricity. So we can put the customer in the center and make sure that we can deliver the right kinds of products and services. On the other hand, you're seeing acceleration. You know, we do a lot of education for clients, and every client is different. Every client has a specific context. They have their specific things they want to discuss. They want to personalize classes for their audience. And one of our clients basically gave a 200-page research report and said, we want to summarize this whole thing into a course. Last year, we would have taken at least 500 hours to put together the slides, the videos, the assessment, and maybe some labs associated with it. This year, with AI, we were able to do it with 100 hours. We were able to cut off 400 hours. And those 100 hours was all human time for validating the outputs of AI. AI probably took 15 to 20 minutes to run through the whole thing once we built the system, right? So that's where we are with respect to the thing. But I want to touch upon this one thing I said, like, you know, this validation time of 100. We tried so much, we could not reduce it. And that's where we are. Because of the state of the art, because of the complexity, validation is becoming the problem. How do we validate what AI is giving us is the right thing? Can we actually use it? Can we really benefit from what it's been up to, right? And the other big question is about the question of value. How much should we be investing and what value are we getting? What are we getting from all the investments we've been making? And there, we are seeing a lot of use cases, low-hanging fruit. Let's automate it with AI. Let's build an assistant. Let's give it to everybody. They'll be able to draft documents, summarize things much, much better. We're seeing a lot of use cases like that. On the other hand, we are seeing use cases wherein human in the loop is mandatory. We can't just AI do all the decisions. And then we have a ton of use cases wherein we are saying maybe there's a little bit of AI in here, a little bit of AI in there. And then we have so many use cases where like, no, AI can't do it. We still need humans to do all the work, right? So the way we are here in 2025 is we are enjoying all these tools, enjoying all these productivity, and I'm also like, you know, increasing my expenditure, you know, along with my cable bills, along with all the other services I have been subscribing to. I'm spending more than $100 a month on various AI tools so I can create all these cool graphics when I do presentations, right? And we are spending a lot of money to AWS and all these other vendors so that we can accelerate our production workflows. And when time is, when these systems are free, my daughter, she puts in things like cat eating cookies, and then cats eating cookies in Picasso style, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So you have the creative side of things where you can do all the cool things. You can do the engineering side of things where you can do things much faster, better, cheaper, and we'll see where it all goes. And the question is, what are you going to be doing with all the cool things AI is potentially going to bring us? Thank you.
So this is something we probably should have talked about, but I'm a dog person, Shri. We didn't have that conversation. So again, thrilled to be with you today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the art of the possible with artificial intelligence and some of the things that we're doing at Nationwide to support this great industry. So where I would start is artificial intelligence isn't new. It's been around for well over a decade. At Nationwide, we've been leveraging artificial intelligence for that entire time. What is changing, as you heard from Shri, is the incredible pace in which it's evolving and changing. It seems like just yesterday we were talking about generative AI, the ability to create new custom content with very little interaction from humans. Shri touched on agents. We're now in an age where agentic AI is going to be prolific. This is AI that actually can not only make decisions without human interaction, but can take action. You see that in autonomous vehicles today. So it's sensing its environment and taking action. We do believe this is going to be a huge part of this industry. We are not quite at a point where we can talk about general artificial intelligence. This actually begins to mimic humans. So a little bit of the science fiction starts to come out in this space, but that's still a little bit ahead of us. So our approach at Nationwide is very balanced. It's really hard to talk about all the great things that are going to happen with AI without at least touching on some of the concerns, and I've listed just a few here. We absolutely believe there's going to need guardrails from a legal and regulatory perspective, making sure that that regulation keeps up with the pace that technology is changing. There are a number of ethical and societal impacts that need to be addressed. Something we heard earlier from Anna at her time at Uber. One of the things that I grew up being told from my parents is one of the things you never ever do is get into a car with a stranger. And I would not have gotten here this morning without inviting that from the hotel. So there is a tremendous amount of change that has to happen for us to be prepared to really get the full benefit out of the technology around artificial intelligence. Privacy and security. This is something that we continuously consider. How do we actually keep what matters most to our customers safe? There is a tremendous amount of money in this industry, which makes it a prime target for threat actors. So each and every day, we're leveraging artificial intelligence to detect artificial intelligence. In our call centers today, within a few seconds of you calling in, we've analyzed hundreds of different data points to understand if you really are who you say you are. So those advances will continue. I think in that space, it's definitely going to be an arms race, and there may not be an end to it. That said, we are very bullish and optimistic on where these benefits are going to come from. Shri touched on many of these in terms of the acceleration, especially in the knowledge worker space as we evolve into a more agentic future. A few others, the personalization has been a theme today in many of the conversations, to actually know you as an individual and not lump you in a category with others that are similar, to actually be able to understand your day-to-day needs. And certainly automation and being more productive. But some of that change that goes along with that, I know Shri in one of his slides talked about AI can actually do coding. That's absolutely the case. Some of the training that we have for our development staff is they may not be authors in the future. They may actually be editors. So AI can help you get to that first draft of your code, just like it can your communications. But to Shri's point, we absolutely believe that a human in the loop is necessary. One of the governance components we put in at Nationwide, we actually started with the absolute top of our executive team to oversee governance and make sure we're making right decisions that are going to really help our business move forward. We do believe generative AI is going to have a incredibly positive impact on the experiences that we provide. We do need to embrace it. I think this is a space where there's still a fair amount of fear and kind of waiting to lean in. I would encourage you all to lean in and start experiencing generative AI in your day-to-day life, just like Bridget is. And back to that human in the loop. You know, one of the things that we do, and this is primarily to really make sure we're protecting data, is we do what's called red teaming. So today we may have a team that has a wonderful new idea on how to leverage AI. We call that the blue team. But right alongside them, we have a red team that is actually looking at every nefarious way to use that for harm. So every single thing that we do from an AI perspective, we are checking and double checking and triple checking. We have an incredible responsibility to make sure that this technology is used for good and not evil. And this is just one of the many processes that we have in place to help do that. Lastly, we are preparing our employees for this future. We have training requirements across every associate in our company. One thing that we do talk a lot about is artificial intelligence isn't just for technology people. We find that through our learning programs internally, that the AI courses that we provide are actually our most popular, and we're seeing people far exceed their minimum requirements in learning about it. So there is definitely a thirst for that, and I think that is going to be foundational. It ties back to what Shri does every single day in providing what I believe is an invaluable service in educating on the possibilities of this technology. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bridget.
Thank you. So, Randy, clearly there must have been some persuasion and discussion before implementing all these technological advancements. Can you discuss a little bit about the change management process at your organization and how other organizations might approach change management as they seek to innovate?
Yeah, it's a great question. Change management, I think, could actually be one of our really biggest barriers, even more so than the technology. Shri touched on it in his comments as well, kind of freeing people up to think differently. One of the things that we found is, even in this idea of automating current processes that you have today, which can be incredibly beneficial, we also have to open our minds up to say, with AI, we have a brand new way to do something that we've never dreamed of before. So you almost have to, kind of give up that past a little bit to think a little bit freer. But to my earlier conversation on other kind of societal norms that I think are going to take place, there is a tremendous amount of fear from an AI perspective, and it ties directly to cyber security, which unfortunately is a booming business. But I do think that's going to be a really, really integral part of how you bring these technologies to market.
Thanks. It's interesting, especially since Brian mentioned earlier that the size of our brain capacity for imagination pales in comparison to our capacity for memory. So the fact that there might be some past experiences that might be negative, and opening up the opportunity to consider the future and imagine and have the vision, it could have some impact for change management. So another question Shri talked about briefly is measuring the value. Could you tell us how you measure ROI on the innovations?
Yeah, it's a great conversation, and we're continually having it. You'll see more traditional metrics like productivity and automating things that are manual or less value. I think the intrinsic value, though, is really going to be tied to the outcomes that collectively this whole room is driving towards, and helping people be more prepared for what will likely be a longer and healthier retirement. And time will tell exactly kind of how those come to market, but kind of being back to that point where we want our associates to really automate and leverage artificial intelligence and other tools on those mundane day-to-day tasks and give them more time to be more human. And we think that connection is really, really important. It happens to be a theme that I think we've heard very broadly today.
So if you have digital assistants, if they're part of your org charts, how do you monitor their performance? And how do you, are you training them? Are you reprimanding them? Are you putting them on, performance plans?
Yeah, it's a great conversation, but we're actually developing training right now on how to hire, how to onboard, and how to develop digital assistants. This kind of speaks to Shree's component around digital workers. There is no question this year I will have digital workers reporting to me on my organizational chart. And to your point, I'm going to have performance conversations with those digital workers, give them feedback, and I will actually have to let them go. So having frontline managers learn those skills on how and when to do that is all part of the change management that we're going to have to go through.
Let's move to Shree just for a moment. So you're teaching at Northeastern. How are your students embracing, or not, I'm guessing it's more of the former, AI, and what kinds of skills are they acquiring that maybe those in the room may not have acquired during their college education?
So I just want to add a comment. You probably are also setting up your own Doge for generative AI assistants to cut the access off if you are...
Tough town to bring that up in.
Absolutely, right? So I usually, give my students, I don't have a traditional way of teaching my students because they are really smart. I mean, they're all graduate students. They're all, coming from diverse experiences. They've figured out their way on, passing exams. They know where to search for answers. They know where to look for projects which were done in the past. They can do pattern recognition. They can learn from things. So they're ready for the industry more or less, because in the industry, no one sits there and thinks they're like, okay, I'm going to come up with a beautiful idea and implement it on my own, right? So you look for, okay, what's the established practice? What are you going to be doing? How have my mentors, how are my seniors doing it? What are the rules? How do I follow it, right? So I don't teach them those, but usually I give them a project. And last year I gave them a project, and usually the project would take 5 to 6 hours to complete. But in a classroom setting, I would say, here's 45 minutes. Go about, do your research, and come up with a proposal to implement a particular thing, right? It's a technology class. And usually in 45 minutes to an hour, we would have students present, and I would see people would have completed 15 to 20% of what could have been done, right, for the whole project. And I would say, go take your homework, finish the whole thing, and come back. This year, I gave the same project. After 45 minutes, I asked, how many of you are done? 90% of them said, we are done. 100%. It's okay, how many of you use ChatGPT to do it? 100% of them raised their hands, right? I don't prevent them from using ChatGPT because it's a productivity tool, and it's a tool you got to integrate as a part of your learning and implementation as you go. We have these tools which are ready to give you the right kinds of outputs for your specific tasks if you prompt it properly. And these students are learning on how to actually implement it. So code generation, right? For example, software development. I mean, the reason why software developers are getting paid so much in today's day and age is because they know something. It's like the secret knowledge in the past, right? In the past, if you knew, how to read, how to write, and no one else knew how to read and write, you are specialized. You are treated with respect. And that's what software engineers of today are, because they know how to write C++. They know how to write Python. If AI could do that part of it, and it could develop those applications, then you don't have that advantage. And AI, because it has seen so many more pieces of code, can give you the templates, can give you the answers much, much, much faster. So I think the younger generation are embracing these tools, right? And when I talk to my clients, and my clients, they're mostly professionals in various retirement systems. They're migrating from one database to another. They have to write the SQL code on how to move this database to this other database integrated with this CRM. There I see reluctance, and there is a little bit of hesitation. It's like, I'm not ready if I'm going to be using these tools. What in case something breaks, right? So there is a paradigm shift on how you adopt these tools in established enterprises. And you want to make sure that they are open to understanding the power and the capabilities, but also put in the frameworks and the guardrails to ensure that you do it responsibly. You build in time for testing and validation. You make sure that it actually works when you build it out. Right? So I'm kind of seeing this fascinating, dichotomy, if you will, wherein on the younger side, my students are like, I already use it. So you give me an assignment which would take 40 hours. I do it in 8 hours, and I'm going to hang out for 32 more hours. So I'm strategizing on my assignments. And Jeff Busgang, who's a Harvard professor, so he's written this book on the experimentation machine. He talks about this notion of 10x, right? So this notion of 10x is, with AI, you can actually be 10x more productive with what you would potentially do. Because if you prompt it well, you will be able to see the productivity, right? In my work, I'm not able to see 10x. It's probably a marketing term. But I am seeing 3x, 4x in various places. And that's where we are going to see in the near future, when we are going to see a lot of productivity gains because we are integrating these tools both explicitly and implicitly as a part of your workflow.
Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of good prompt writing and the validation exercise, and who's doing the validation for the output?
Yeah, so that's the other interesting piece. So when I kind of talk about my students, I give a lot of examples about my students because they teach me so much, right? Last year, when I gave them the assignments, and I said, you can use ChatGPT, they would come up with answers. And I would say, what if this happens? Can you show me a demo if this breaks? And they would show it, and it would break. And I said, well, you didn't test your system properly. And they would say, well, it was ChatGPT who gave me the code, not me. I didn't write the code. ChatGPT gave me the code. Tell them, well, it's your assignment. You get the grade. I'm not grading ChatGPT. So you got to fix all the things which could potentially go wrong. So that's the mentality we need to have in the industry, wherein what could potentially go wrong? And that's where the validation systems come in. So the mentality is a little bit different, wherein as a software developer, you're thinking about designing and making the systems to work. As a validator, you're thinking about like what could potentially go wrong, what are the requirements of this particular application, and test and make sure that it actually works for that particular business use case. Right? So the thought process is a little bit different. It's not about just getting the code to work. It's about thinking about what should work, what are the metrics I should be using to make sure that everything works, and how do you make sure that you are not kind of going with the flow and then realizing something breaks. So at Quant University, the kinds of things we do, right? So we actually put together a 6-month program called as the Risk Management Program, and we are partnering with an organization called Sprimia, which is the Professional Risk Managers Institution. And we have risk managers from 18 different countries, professionals from various organizations. They take the 6-month curriculum, learning how to think about the risks of these models, how to stress test them, how to audit these models, and to ensure that you're building out those practices as you kind of integrate it as a part of the workflow. So when we do this professional education, workshops for various clients, we kind of, bring in that perspective that it's not about developing an application, it's about building an application, but putting all these guardrails, the red teaming, the processes, the procedures, and adhering to all these aspects before you can deploy these applications.
Randy, I'm wondering if your red team is comprised mostly of compliance and counsel.
No, they're not actually, although we don't limit that. We actually, in our hiring practices, by the way, we hire a very diverse group of folks to be part of our software development processes. And even internally in our cyber security operations center, we have some of the most brilliant folks that quite honestly, when we look at their skills versus the most talented hackers in the world, the only difference we see is their value system. And I blame their parents for that, by the way. But it's incredible when you give them all the tools, not following any of our normal enterprise practices in terms of what equipment they use, and how they go about kind of attacking ourselves is really kind of special to watch. But having that, I think, is an absolute requirement. Along with kind of the AI generation and where this is taking us from a cyber security perspective, we operate on what we call a zero trust model. Essentially what that means is we can't assume people are coming for good and have that natural tendency we have as humans. We have to be skeptics. So even if I log in and I kind of fat finger my password, Nationwide doesn't really assume that I just misspelled it. They assume that I'm attacking them, and we react accordingly.
Retirement assets are, for many people, the largest sum of money they'll ever have in their life, and it's very important to safeguard those assets. So, Randy, is there anything else you can share about how you're helping plan sponsors and plan advisors on their AI use?
Yeah, it's really interesting when I have these conversations with different audiences, and I ask my software development teams to wake up every day thinking about their customer. And we have kind of the way we talk about it is an outside-in kind of mentality, and how would you want that customer to interact with you? Whether that's a participant, a plan sponsor, to your point, an advisor. What I find, quite honestly, is most of those audiences don't have the resources that I have. And I think that is a really, really big challenge. As I mentioned earlier, we ask every associate to deepen their skills in AI, and it's part of every mentoring conversation that I have. And I would encourage all of you to increase your knowledge and use of AI, because I do believe this is a great divide where people could be left behind. But we are working very hard on how we can actually equip those audiences a little bit differently with that tool set. It likely will be where a lot of that innovation takes place. In kind of a previous world, we might be giving you information. In a future world, we would be giving you insights. So how do we leverage that data and tools in a new way? But we're really doing that through voice of the customer with those audiences.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? I see one over here, and I see Rodney. Let's start over on this side.
Thank you. I have a question for Sri. So I know on the ChatGPT you ask it to reason and prompt it to think. Mm-hmm. And I really want to know about your students. How is their reasoning and thinking after all of this I would say, high usage of ChatGPT?
Right. There was a recent paper which actually said that they're seeing that the critical thinking is going down in certain segments as you become more and more reliant on tools like ChatGPT, which is something we got to watch for. Because, the math question I asked in the beginning, right? You all could do it, but the first question I had was a much more complex one. I had it like per year, and I didn't want you to do a lot of math. But in the past, you could do a lot of math if you're doing it on pencil and paper, right? But we have lost those skills. How many of you took cursive writing in your undergrad. Say, you probably don't need it now, but you probably have lost the need of, using those things. So similarly, like coding, right? So, if you're thinking about designing a piece of code, it requires logical thinking, articulation, design, and building out the whole thing. But with ChatGPT, it gives you a pattern, and you kind of, start using it, right? So that is something to watch for. We are seeing a lot of those skills going down. I mean, in the past, we would write cover letters by hand. And we are seeing employers look at artificial intelligence generated cover letters and putting them aside because it's templatized, it's very clean and formal, it uses all the keywords of what was required in a resume, but it doesn't highlight why this person wants to work for us, right? So that sense of personality is being lost when you're kind of using these tools. So similarly, if you're going to be relying on ChatGPT to do everything for you, design something, you will get a gravitation towards the mean. You will always end up with an average product, right? So you want to make sure that you start with a draft to set the framework and then ensure that you bring in your creativity, your critical knowledge, your group's knowledge to ensure that the product you end up is going to be your product, because you don't want an average product just to satisfy a need. So that's where I'm seeing. I like the reasoning mode because it lets me think on things which I may not have thought of, but I don't just use the reasoning mode as the limit for what I should be using for reasoning.
This is for you, Randy. Last month, Pew Research came out with the results of a survey on worker perspectives on AI. And when workers were asked about what emotion they had associated with AI in the workplace, over half said worried. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is that Pew, similar to EBRI's workplace wellness survey, they weren't worried about losing their jobs. Only about a third are worried. That's what EBRI's workplace wellness survey, and so did Pew found that. Rather, when we look at other research, like from Wiley, the concern is many workers that are using AI have not received clear expectations as to what the employer rather is expecting from them when using AI. How is it going to be integrated in my role? So I ask you, it's great that you're doing training, because that's another thing workers express in the surveys they want, but they also want to have defined expectations around AI use at the workplace. What is Nationwide doing to address that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I haven't seen that particular study, but I've seen data that is very similar. Actually, when Bridget talked about the fact that she uses ChatGPT every day and is okay to admit it, that's some of the surveys that I've seen is people will use it, but they don't want to admit that they've leveraged these tools. So we're still in early days in terms of how that kind of works itself out. But at Nationwide, again, we do encourage the use of these tools. We also track that. So we actually understand kind of this connection between, it sounds a little bit scientific, but human and machine. We actually call it a bionic process, by the way. But we want that machine learning and artificial intelligence to augment the human and not the other way around. So one of the concerns, and I know we've touched on it here, is lack of supervision. It's one of my biggest fears going forward. And if your organization is like mine, there are subject matter experts in every organization that you know by name that understand the inner workings of some of the most complex things that your organizations do. It could be a little frightening if you lose that and turn that over to an AI system and it doesn't proliferate that knowledge across the organization. So setting expectations is incredibly important. But back to that supervision, I know what my developers are using artificial intelligence for, and back to a theme Shri has and how we're testing that. So again, still early days, but a lot has to be worked out in that space. But that data is going to kind of be that voice of the customer in leading us forward in how we evolve our processes around that.
Thank you. I think we're going to be getting the hook in just about a minute. So if we could just close out with some final thoughts on what you are most excited about going forward in the next 5 to 10 years with respect to AI and how it relates to retirement security.
Yeah, I'll start, Shri. Obviously, as a technologist, I'm not only interested in AI, but I'm interested in all of the other surround technologies. And a specific industry that I spend a lot of my time understanding is healthcare. So artificial intelligence is going to have an incredible impact in that industry. But when you couple it with other technologies like where compute power is going, whether that be quantum, robotics, the use of augmented or virtual reality, ultimately, in my humble estimation, will lead to kind of the theme of the day, which is a happier, healthier, longer life. Where that intersects with us, obviously, is in our industry, are we preparing folks for that longevity? And to Brian's point this morning, do we really understand how to make them happy? And I think the assets that we accumulate and likely the income that we can outlive is going to be the responsibility of folks in this room.
I like this notion of hyper-personalization, where in last year, we were kind of just looking at tools as a question answering mechanism. We were asking a question, getting back an answer. Most of it was without context. We were just trying to get some information from a system. But when you look at all the data we have, our healthcare records, our retirement savings, our context of our family, our community, our backgrounds, our interests, our aspirations about the future, our communities, all those have a very strong context. And when we think about retirement, when we think about planning in general, right? So we make those plans based on the context we are in at this point in time, right? And if we can basically leverage all the information we have collected over the last few decades and build out systems personalized for specific demographics, so that we can even think about providing specific advice drawn from this collective knowledge source we have, right? I think we can have much better decision-making systems powered by AI, right? Without the context, it just becomes an information source. It becomes a potential for automation, but it doesn't have that context. So I'm very excited about the possibility of integrating all the data we have and then building the context and enabling this personalized system so that I can think about, well, can I plan this trip next year now that I'm retiring? Well, let me consider all the factors, and then it may say, well, I think you have saved enough. You can even buy a boat and settle in Greece. Or it could potentially tell me that, well, you can take the train ride and enjoy the mall and come back home, right? So I hope that we will be able to get to that state wherein we can leverage all this piece of information and not just have AI as this distant thing which we are going to interact with only when we need, but it hopefully gets integrated well so that we can trust it and we can bestow it with our trust and data so it can give the decisions we really want to be able to use.
Thank you. And thank you to Randy and Shri. And we are welcoming our next session.